you went under the wheels.
Affected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
And I'm Gabe.
And in today's episode, we're going Savage Rage and Berserk with Robert Eggers' The Northman. I will get it right at least once.
You got it right at the beginning. Now you can fuck it up for the next hour and a half.
Oh my god. Like I'd been like cautiously optimistic about this movie since I heard about it because it sounds like my kind of movie, like Savage Revenge. Like it sounds like mine and Austin's kind of movie. Savage Revenge movie taking place in like ye ancient days, with lots of like blood and gore and weird visual images and shit.
Yeah, I mean, I've tried so hard to dampen my expectations just so I don't end up disappointing myself. Because, yeah, it's like, oh boy, a Robert Eggers movie full of violence about crazy, insane Vikings based on based on the saga that Hamlet was based on.
Yes.
So it's basically just Hamlet, but better. And Hamlet's already Shakespeare's best play. So
I like Coriolanus. But I only like the Ralph Fiennes Coriolanus movie, so maybe I don't actually like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway. So, you know what the one thing that was holding me back from just being all in on it before it was released?
What?
Alexander Skarsgard hasn't been the lead in a good movie. Period.
Until now.
What do you give The Northman? I'm going to pause awkwardly every time.
Solid, shiny, and chrome.
Yeah, it's a totally solid, shiny, and chrome. I was hoping so badly that I'd be like, oh my god, this movie's going to be like practically perfect. It's close. It's close for me. You're going to hate the only reason why it kind of isn't for me.
I mean, it's not practically perfect for me, but it is really, really good.
It's exceptionally good.
Well, yeah. Well, as much as you, me, and Austin all love this movie, I think I actually love it the least out of the three of us.
Let's talk about that. Let's start actually, let me just get the two things out of the way that I was like, on. One was I felt like it took too long to get going, which is the same problem I had with Everything Everywhere. So I think it's just a personal problem. Talk to a doctor and get that looked at. And then the other thing was like overall, I love the cinematography in the movie. I think it's brilliant and it's really good. But I'm just not a fan of the straight on headshots that they have, that Robert Eggers has in this movie and in The Lighthouse. I'm just not as big a fan of them. I feel like they look kind of corny. And so some of like the shots that were stable and not moving, I thought the framing was like just kind of okay, which is like a weird nitpick because the rest of the cinematography is like hardcore, long tracking takes of like slowly developing moments and badassness and action and shit. So, yeah. So yeah, those were the two things that kind of held the movie back for me.
Yeah. I mean, okay. Well, right off the bat, I guess we should quickly synopsize The Northman.
Yes. Synops away.
The Northman is about a Viking prince whose father is killed by his uncle, and then his uncle inherits his father's kingdom and marries his mother when he's a child. He runs away and returns as an adult to kill everyone and take his kingdom back. It's Hamlet.
Badass.
And it's great. It even has Yorick in it.
Oh my god. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice pull. Nice pull. And
it even
Vikings...
has Yorick's skull in it.
Yeah.
Or Hymir, as he is in this.
No, Amleth. Talk about lisps. Amleth the Northman.
Alas, poor Hymir. I knew him, he witch.
I knew him, Olga. Like out of all the names, and then we have Olga.
I know.
Like, oh, hey, Arthur, how are you doing there? Good to see you. All right.
So, with respect to the cinematography, like it looks really good for the most part. I think that, you know, I think I still really like the interiors. The interiors still have that like The Witch sort of painterly vibe to them, where everything's like lit with candles and fire, and it just looks really cool. I don't know if this was shot on digital, but it has that like weird, uncanny digital look at times, which kind of threw me off because I was kind of going in thinking of like the lighthouse and the witch, which both felt very like textured, and there's like a substance to the visuals, you know.
I think it was shot on film. I just did a quick search.
Okay.
I think it was shot on film, but it did have a digital intermediary because they're saying the negative format was 35 millimeter.
Okay. So maybe they
And then it was
fucked
printed
it up
digitally.
in post.
It was probably it probably has more to do with like after they digitally scanned it and put it back onto 35 millimeter and then projected it. They projected it digitally, and it might have.
I mean, there's just some stuff. There's just some stuff that, you know, looks good but still struck me as odd. Like there's bits where Amleth is running around like in the light of the full moon, and I'm just watching this thing. It's like, man, that full moon is like awfully bright and only shining on specific places.
Yeah.
Which just like, I mean, like, there's nothing really wrong with that. This is totally a nitpick, but it just, like, it does kind of throw the vibe off a little bit. Especially in contrast with the scenes that are in daylight or scenes that are lit by fire that just look fantastic. It's kind of weird to have that dispersion in I guess, the quality.
So one of the things that they do is like this movie was obviously super heavily color graded because they tried to make Ireland look like Iceland. But also they did the thing we talked about Shadow and how in Shadow they desaturate everything, and so it's almost like this movie has two colors. It's either like oh, nice painterly normal colors, or it's nighttime and we're in black and white because it's at 99 desaturation where it's like, oh, I can barely see the green in there, but it's there. I wonder if that also
it's either this like beautiful Renaissance painting cinematography or we're in like Revenge of the Sith.
I was gonna say a silent. Well, because that's the thing. Like we were talking before about silent films, and like especially the beginning of this movie felt like using different like aspects and properties of silent movies and like those old silent movies with like the awkward close-ups that don't look like really good close-ups. But like that's what I was thinking of. I was like, oh yeah, he's clearly inspired by like silent film.
Yeah. Well, also just like older movies in general.
And Dark Souls.
Really?
Well, you know, when he gets his magic sword, it's like fighting a Dark Souls boss.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes, he has to dive roll around the
room. Shields are no good here. Get your stamina back up before you can re-engage.
Yeah, but you know, I think for the most part the movie's amazing just because it's got, obviously, you know, Robert Eggers plays super close attention to like historical detail and tries really, really hard to emulate what we believe to be historical fact as much as possible, like drawing from contemporary sources and all these other things. Like I was reading an interview with him where he's going into like some of the crap that he and his team went through, and it's like, you know, he had historians and archaeologists working with him to like rebuild these sets based on artifacts and like contemporary drawings and descriptions that they found. He was saying that the saga that this is based on, you know, it was written down in like 1000 or 1100 AD. But obviously it takes place in more like 800 AD. So it's an old story that was told verbally for a long time before being written down. And then he's saying when it was written down in an abbey, so it has like a Christian overlay to it.
Oh God.
So, well, same thing with Beowulf. Like Beowulf has a very
that's
strong
true.
Christian overlay to it because, it was a story told verbally for hundreds of years, and then, these Christian monks who had the power of writing were like, "Hey, this is a cool story. We should probably write it down." So he's talking about how like they had to, because obviously it's Christian writing about essentially pre-Christian time and people. So they had to strip out all that influence to try and get at like, okay, what are the most basic, true to Norse culture parts of these stories? And then on top of that, he was saying like for the dialogue, these like Beowulf and these other sagas are written in Old English, or the original, the first recordings of them were in Old English. So he was saying that the way that those were written were basically the basis for the dialogue, where they would just try to take the grammar and syntax of those early writings and then translate that into how the characters would speak. Obviously, knowing that they couldn't write it in like old Scandinavian. But I mean, it's cool that he goes through all this effort and it comes through really well because it feels really grounded in history. And then that kind of gives you a jumping off point for all of the hallucinatory, fantastical crap that gets thrown in there as well.
Right.
Because, like, it's debatable whether, like, you want to believe that this is a fantasy and it's, like, true to the sagas and that it has fantastical elements and there are monsters and magic and all this shit. But it also kind of, like, plays with that a little bit where, like, you see the story from the point of view of people who believe in gods and magic and the supernatural, but that a lot of what goes on could potentially be explained in a more materialistic way, but that you're not going to get that explanation because like that worldview is not accessible to these characters. Mm-hmm. So it's like every time, like when they do like rituals or things like that to commune with the gods or whatever, like you see it from their view and not from an outsider's perspective. So you kind of feel, I don't know, it's a cool way of putting the audience in the shoes of like of something that's totally foreign to how we think and live now. Like I think a good example is like the two rituals at the beginning where you have young Prince Amleth and his father and Hymir, Yorick, the fool. They do like kind of an initiation ritual for Amleth to become a man, and he drinks the mead of knowledge and like begins hallucinating all this stuff, and it's like it's shown from his perspective. Like to him, this is magical, mm-hmm. and not just some like, not just him projecting a bunch of shit while absolutely high off his rocker.
Right.
And then, like, the second one is the Berserker Ritual. So you have Amleth as an adult with a bunch of other Viking warriors. They're dressed in animal skins, and there's kind of a shaman leading them to freak out. And it's done in a way where it's like, the guy is saying it's like, you are now the bear, you are now ferocious, you are an animal who only craves blood. Like, take off your human skin and reveal the bear or the wolf that is inside you. And like obviously none of these guys turn into bears or wolves, but like they do, you sort of are with them as they change. Like they are kind of psychologically ripping their skin off and psychologically and emotionally turning into these animals. And Alexander Skarsgård delivers probably the best performance of any scene he's ever done, ever, in that scene where he's just foaming at the mouth, screaming.
There's so much drool in this movie. It's fucking disgusting. It's so disgusting.
So yeah, like all that work that they do to kind of create this world and then create this very realistic world and then create like a parallel fantastical world that feels grounded in it. Mm-hmm. works really well, and it does a really good job of putting you in the shoes of these people and the time and like the insanity of all of it.
Agreed. That's why I was saying it would have been cool to see him do like his take on a Game of Thrones thing, because like the line between magic and science and mysticism, at least on the show, is like it blends so well where you're like, is it actually magic or is it something else? And like there are weird things that happen in the movie where you're like, this would be a realistic version of like a fantasy trope. So like the sword, for example, is my favorite one, where it's like if it's in the daytime, he can't pull it out no matter how hard he tries, but as soon as it's nighttime, he can pull it out. And it's a really weird thing, and I was trying to science my way into it. Like, I don't know, maybe the moon like causes the polarity of the magnets in the scabbard to change so he can pull it out. I don't fucking know. But I thought I like stuff like that. I call it like, I guess it's kind of like hard fantasy, but not really. It's probably closer to like the swords and sorcery type stuff where it's like, there's magic,
like
but it's limited.
Fantasy. Exactly.
Yeah, low fantasy.
There's a great scene where, so he is sort of led on his journey by a set of prophecies, and it's always debatable kind of whether the seers and fortune tellers who give him these prophecies are real or if it's just him. But he's told to retrieve a magic sword, so he goes and gets the sword, and he has to fight a giant Draugr for it. But after he defeats the Draugr, everything sort of resets. So it's like, oh, well, maybe he just imagined the Draugr, and it was really just a dead body, that he took the sword from. Mm-hmm. But then the sword just doesn't open.
Yeah.
During the daytime, he can't unsheath it. So like, there you go.
Or like not to jump around too much, but like there's elements of magic that happen, but it's not like like, ooh, magic. It's just like, that's a weird coincidence that it happens to happen just like that. It's like, I like that. I think that's really cool. I think they had elements of that in the Witch as well, but it's a cool approach to take.
Exactly, like Anya Taylor-Joy's character. So a big plot point of the movie is, Amleth runs away from home after his father's killed and just becomes a wanderer. He joins up with a band of Vikings, and they raid a Russian village and take a bunch of slaves as prisoner. Amleth disguises himself as one of the slaves once he figures out that they'll be shipped to his uncle, and he's kind of reminded about his like thirst for revenge. So a fellow slave is Olga, who's played by Anya Taylor-Joy, and she's a witch, and her whole thing, call back to the Witch.
It's like her great ancestor.
Yeah. And her whole thing is like, she's like, oh yeah, I'm like a master of earth magic. Like the earth tells me things and I can use its powers to enchant people and stuff. But really she's just a good like drug chemist more than anything. Like she knows what mushrooms will cause people to freak out, what mushrooms will poison people or make them sick, what mushrooms will calm people down. She like is just really familiar with like plants and whatnot, but to her it's magic, and to everyone around her it's magic. Mm-hmm. So again, it's kind of like that, like it's realistic, but it's also sort of fantastical, and they ride that line very well
until like the end, when like that's the thing that I thought of, like the whole like Stanley Kubrick reverse tracking shot as she's walking forward and shouting things. That was the moment I was like, all right, this does bring even more questions to mind about how to straddle the line. But I liked all of that. It, like I said, it was right up my alley. I was like, I was here for it. I was here for the low fantasy aspects. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why well, one thing I will say, like going back to the technical side quickly, is that I think this movie has fantastic editing. It's one of the few movies that I've seen where I just like took a moment and I was like, all right, some other stuff might not be gelling, but the editing to me was like amazing.
Oh, it was impeccable.
Which kind of threw me off because I did not expect it to be so good.
Well,
Especially,
I mean, Robert Eggers movies are never known for their editing, but the editing's always pretty sharp.
like transition from scene to scenes are always like it flows so naturally, and like even though I complain about the pace of the beginning, it's not really that bad because like I'm recounting the whole thing in my mind, and I'm like, maybe that boy who played as Amleth was just annoying. I think that was it. It's like I just really don't like Ethan Hawke. Okay, get off my back, guys. Now, but like the other thing is like they use a lot of really clever transitions, especially in that scene in the beginning when he's like eating the stew. Like they have really clever transitions to show like how he's starting to trip balls, which there's like a classic way you can do it, and then there's like a very clever way. I think they do a really clever way in the movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the scene where they poison everyone's stew.
Yeah,
and they're like guys are just freaking out. That was so cool.
And like killing themselves.
Yeah, and I mean it's cool how like they they're hallucinating and hearing voices and shit, but like you just kind of they just make everything very misty and smoky, which is God, I'm so glad a movie has like good use of particle effects, cuz man, oh man, I missed how they did that in the 80s and 70s.
Bring back the fog machine.
Yeah, Eggers brought back the fucking fog machine, man.
What was the other movie that we watched that has really good fog machines? Was it The Last Duel? No, there was another movie.
Could it have been? Was it a Del Toro movie?
No, because you hate Nightmare Alley. You would never give it a compliment like that.
No, why? Hey, I did compliment its production design.
That's true. I'm trying to think of what it was, but there was a movie that you're like, oh, this is nice. I actually really like. While you think about that, I really like the visual effects as well, even though some of them are kind of like the wolf doesn't really look realistic at all. Mm-hmm. But the whole like family tree where it's like stemming from the heart, I thought was really cool.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know about that. It was a cool idea. The CGI looked like baffling.
I didn't have too much of a problem with the CGI because, well, one, when I was watching it, I didn't realize the budget. And then after I realized the budget, I was kind of like, what the fuck?
I know. It's like a $90 million and this is the CGI?
Oh, my God. The $90 million was for Alexander Skarsgard's...
trainer.
The oil that they had to pour on him throughout all of the movie.
Well, it's just like... I mean, again, Robert Eggers in the past has worked with so low of a budget that basically all his effects had to be practical, even if they're like those really janky seagulls from the lighthouse. But like, I'm more willing to accept the janky practical seagulls than I am the CGI heart tree of ancestry.
No, I like it. Like, I understand that it's fake and it looks fake, and that's fine. I think the most, well, we can talk about budget a little bit later, but like, I'm okay with that. The wolf thing, I'm fine with. It just didn't look super good to me. Like the wolf they had, there's a reason they always like cast it in shadows and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, the other visual effects, like the decapitations, I can't imagine how much it costs to remove that one dude's nose.
Oh yeah,
through like all
Some
of the shots.
Some blood effects looked a little strange too.
Yeah,
but they looked more good than not.
Some of the intestine stuff looked kind of like, I was like,
hell,
because normally that shit grosses me out, but I was kind of like, that's okay with that.
All the intestine stuff, I was just like, rock and roll, man.
Feed it to me on a plate so I can eat it.
As soon as like all of the because the violence at the beginning is severe but not insane, and then as soon as the violence does start to get insane, I'm just like, yeah, rock and roll.
This is the shit I come here for. Well, let's talk about that first, because that first action scene where like he catches the spear in midair, turns it around and throws it back at a dude, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I was like, oh, shit, this is a really long take. And it does cut. And then it immediately goes into another one. And I was like, dude, this shit's badass. And then I realized that, like, most of the action scenes are going to be like that. And I was like, bro, I'm 100% here for it.
Yep.
Let's fucking go.
That shit was so badass.
Dude,
And I mean,
yeah.
it's also like incredibly depressing too, because they're just murdering like random innocent people.
Yeah.
And
I
then
mean,
throw a bunch of kids in a barn and light it on fire.
yeah, I mean, they do have, I think, like, one thing the movie does well is, like, establish that Amleth, while maybe he does horrible things, is not a horrible person.
He's not
because,
the most horrible person.
Because, like, they lean into, like, Alexander Skarsgård's, like, really sad eyes. And, like, they show, like, all of these things happening, and they just cut back to him looking kind of sad.
Yeah,
and then
it's
"Aw."
an interesting, like, sort of... I think so getting into, like, my big criticism of the movie...
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily bad, it just didn't work for me, is tone. So the movie is, like most Robert Eggers movies, very nihilistic in the sense that, like, the people aren't good or bad. They're just sort of neutral. But that the world is horrible. And horrible things are visited upon people almost randomly. And there's all this suffering, and then that's it. That nothing really comes out of it. But then that sort of clashes with, I think, some of the attempts, it seems like, to make characters more redeeming. So, like, a minor example is Amleth takes part in all these raids where, like, they make slaves of women and children, villages are butchered indiscriminately, like, people are raped right and left. Like, all this horrible stuff is done, and Amleth is set apart where it's like he kills a bunch of people and facilitates all this, but he, like, doesn't approve, you know? Like, he's just one hair's breadth above everybody else morally. And that's, like, a weird thing to do, I think. Especially when you contrast it to, say, The Lighthouse, where, like, you know, both characters are pretty dubious morally, or The Witch, where everyone is pretty much innocent, and they just have horror upon horror visited upon them.
Right.
So it just seems weird, like, oh, but Amleth's different. He's not like other Vikings. He doesn't rape anyone that we see. So that's, like, a minor example. Kind of the major example is Love Story with Olga. Just feels so out of place. And I don't know if that's just an artifact of the saga, because obviously, like, these are mythic, heroic narratives that, you know, Eggers is drawing upon. So, like, that very well could have been a part of that. And he's just going based off the source material. It could very well be that he's just like, you know what, we need to lighten this up a little bit, give this movie a little more of a heart. Or it could have been the studio said, hey, you need to give this movie more of a heart. And Robert Eggers was like, okay, sure, I'll do what I can. I don't know. But it just felt off the whole time. Like, especially there's a bit where he and Olga are sitting by a hot spring, and they're basically just saying what they're thinking out loud. and Amleth is just like, my whole life I have been filled with hate. Hate is the only thing I know, but now I know something else. I wish I could be free of this hate forever and only be with you. And I'm like, what the fuck is this, man? This doesn't make any sense. This doesn't fit. But yeah, I don't know why it's there. It just felt so off to me.
I didn't actually have a problem with the romance story. I think it probably is just, like, leaning into conventions of the genre and trying to adapt it to their own unique style. I would say it's either that or just, like, part of the original story. Again, I like it because then you're giving the character a reason to make a choice, even though all of it is about, like, oh, I have to find my fate by facing him on the volcano.
Well, yeah, I mean, though there's a very strong sort of theme running through of, like, fate versus choice, and how, you know, they believe everything's fate, the strings of fate, and all this. So then, yeah, it's like, then, you know, he has a choice to make, but he's also fated to make that choice.
It's the Matrix all over again.
I know.
You have free will, but...
Or do you?
Everything is determined, but you have free will. Basically, you have the ability to make a choice one way or another, but you will always make the same choice every time. So is it free will? I don't know. Eye of the beholder, you tell me.
Well, I mean, The Matrix is a lot more political in its expression of that, whereas this is, I think, more mystical. Because with The Matrix is like, you know, in a world where the people who have power create everything and create a role for you to play, like how much choice do you have? And is the only choice whether to accept it or destroy it?
And is it bad to accept that choice?
Yeah. See, The Matrix is really about capitalism, guys.
Hey, man.
And about how the elites have created a miserable place for us to all suffer in.
I was watching the H-Bomber guy Deus Ex video again. And I got to the part where they're like, at some point, video games have to make money. And I'm just thinking, like the Wachowskis are like, at some point, our movies have to make money. A suit comes to Robert Eggers and is like, put that romance in. Why? Because at some point, our movie has to make money. He's like, oh, fuck, dude.
No one is seeing this movie for the romance, though. Everyone's watching this to see, like, intestines ripped out.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the marketing campaign is like gone. I could have sworn this was an A24 movie until it actually was released, and I was like, oh wait, no, it's not. It's a Focus Features movie because I didn't do. I
could have sworn it was an A24 movie until I saw the budget, and I couldn't like run away from it at what was it, UFC 273.
Oh,
every 5 minutes, it's like UFC 273 is brought to you by Focus Features The Northman in theaters April. Blah, blah, blah. The Northman, follow your fate or find your fate, whatever the fuck the tagline is. Like as
conquer
dudes
your
beating
fate.
The shit out of each other.
Some stooge in a studio is like, fuck, dude, we got to come up with a cool catchphrase, and it's like, all Northmen are gods. It's like, no, that's not good. It needs to be more generic. Conquer your fate.
Yeah,
there
it's
you
like
go.
conquer your fate or like something like that. Something horrendously stupid.
No, it's conquer your fate. I have the Wikipedia pulled up
okay.
with the poster. Yeah, conquer your fate. I will conquer my fate. What does he fail to do? Conquer his fate. Okay, well. Oh, sorry, spoilers.
Well, he sees his fate through.
Yes.
Which is more accurate, I guess.
I don't
it's
think
more
that,
like
that doesn't
to your fate.
That doesn't put butts in the seats, Gabe. They don't want to see your fate through as the tagline for the movie.
You know what puts butts in seats? Blood, gore, and rip dudes' butts.
I was gonna say, like, what puts butts in seats? Blood, gore, and Alexander Skarsgard's abs. That's the other thing. It was like, this guy's known. I remember in True Blood, like, hearing all about him, and it's like, that dude is like a diamond of a man, an Adonis. And I'm like, dude, why isn't he just like shirtless this entire movie? Probably because it was too cold in Ireland, but still.
Probably.
I mean,
there's a lot of butts in this movie.
There are a lot of old people butts that are like not toned. No offense, Willem Dafoe as Yorick. He's just like got his saggy gut there, and I'm like, and it's only because he's old. That sounded terrible, but like Willem Dafoe.
So you're telling me Willem Dafoe wasn't actually jacked in Spider-Man No Way Home?
No, there was a reason he was wearing those pants, and he was wearing like long pants, and the pants were covering his gut. Like, all right, you just push it all down, push all of the sag down.
He's wearing like Spanx,
and a girdle. Yeah, no,
I could deal with everyone else being like flappy and soft if Willem Dafoe was absolutely shredded in this movie.
That would have been funny. But then like instead of Alexander Skarsgård, they would have just gotten Willem Dafoe as the lead.
Yes, that would be even better. Are you kidding me?
I will have my revenge.
Ancient Prince Amleth.
He's still like one of the best things in this movie. I will say, like, when it started, I almost wanted to immediately jump into the closed caption screening because I could not understand anything that Ethan Hawke was mumbling. I was just like, dude, enunciate, please.
He enunciates towards the end of his like 5 minutes of screen time.
The more dead he becomes, the better he speaks. But okay, so here's the thing about Alexander Skarsgård quickly. His primal roar is amazing. He looks like the ultimate Viking killer. However, he's got like the highest, wimpiest regular voice I've ever heard. And it kind of took me out a little bit because like in the movie he's like blah, but then when he's talking like up here, and I was like, oh no, what's Alexander? What's going on? Why?
He killed my boy.
He killed my father, and now I must kill him. Like, and it actually is helpful because I could at least understand what he was saying, as opposed to like Ethan Hawke, who was doing his best like
Yerga Hingder Dingder accent.
When you go to Norway, you expect adventure and danger, but what you find is beauty and.
You sound like the Guillermo del Toro like Ren and Stimpy ripoff from Death Stranding when you do that.
There was a ride. I'll probably have to put it at the beginning. There was a ride in Epcot that was like super janky. Like it wasn't super janky, but like it was in the Norway Pavilion in Epcot, and I swear I'll be fast. And it was called Maelstrom, and they had all of these brilliant ideas for it. And some of them potentially dangerous, like having a Tesla coil in a room with a bunch of rainy water. Ooh. Not the smartest thing. But the Norwegian government stopped giving Disney money, so they had to cut a bunch of things. So what went from like this thing that was going to be like this amazing epic ride ended up turning into like the equivalent of Best of the Worst. And it was amazing, and I loved that ride. But it opens with you going up a gravity hill because it's a water ride. You're in a Nordic Viking boat, and it takes you up, and all you see is one light illuminated because it's supposed to be Odin One Eye. And he's just like, most people come to Norway in search of adventure and danger, but what they really find is beauty and harmony. And it's so bad, but so good. And anytime I could ride it, I rode it. And now it's been replaced by Frozen, so rip.
They should have had, just the way you're doing the accent, they should have had Charlie Hunnam voice.
Most people come to Norway for adventure and danger, but instead they find beauty.
Oh my god, it's almost frightening how accurate your Charlie Hunnam impression is. Like, it's like there are certain words that somehow you just nail perfectly. And as much as I love Alexander Skarsgård, I won't lie, if Charlie Hunnam played the main role in this movie, I would have been equally happy. No, Olga, I must go back and murder my uncle. Oh, okay. All right. Charlie Hunnam.
So, another interesting Hamlet connection.
Yes.
Is...
Thank you for taking it back on track.
Amleth, wants to let his mom know that he's still alive, right?
Yes.
So he sneaks into her room to find her, and she's not there. But when she enters, he hides behind a loom, which is like hiding behind the curtain.
Yeah.
In
nice.
Hamlet. And then later, when he goes back there, he's about to stab the loom, thinking someone might be behind it, like he stabbed Polonius when he was hiding behind it.
Nice. Good pull. I thought you were going to talk about how they had weird potential incest vibes going on.
Well, that's more the nouveau, late 1800s, early 1900s interpretation of Hamlet. But yeah, what did you think about spoilers? Amleth's mom trying to seduce him, and generally just fucking with his mind.
I actually like. Yeah, let's just go into full-on spoilers. I liked the twist. I kind of felt like it might. It didn't feel like it was out of left field that she was like, "I hated your father."
No, yeah, I could kind of anticipate. Like, I was sort of anticipating her being like, "No, don't kill your uncle. I like him."
Yeah, like your uncle actually cares for me. And the more her story unfolded, the more sympathetic I got to her cause. Yeah, it was a little creepy when she started like making out with him, but I guess it's even creepier if you realize like Nicole Kidman and Alexander Skarsgård played husband and wife on Big Little Lies. So yeah, it's like, oh wow, you had a rough 15 years of your early life, Nicole Kidman's character. But you know, it luckily, like, I was kind of nervous about it because I was like, oh no, this is like A24 territory. I've seen this happen, but it didn't go too terribly far. And it did seem like a ruse to try and like get back up there so that they could take him out. So I thought it was interesting and I thought it was effective. I thought it worked well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it, like, her, you know, trying to seduce him was definitely like, what the fuck?
Well, she hadn't seen him in, like, you know, many years later.
Well, but then even afterwards, even after he says, no, like, no, mom, it's me. Mom, stop. Mm-hmm. She still, like, goes ahead anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I think they kind of, like, tried to draw a parallel between, like, her life as a slave being, like, she had basically given up most of her humanity and care for any of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, like, she was willing to do whatever she could to survive. Minus the uncle who she, like, legitimately loved.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, I was watching that, and then later on, and, like, he accidentally kills the mom and the son, and, like, I don't know, like, if it felt earned but also weird. Does that make sense?
I think it felt earned. I think it was just so fast. You know, like, him killing them happens so quickly, but it feels earned, like his sudden, you know, what have I done? Again, because I can't stop thinking of the prequels. Like, that feels very earned because he still cares about his mom and it, like, couldn't pull the trigger earlier. And then he actually really cares about his half brother, the kid. Like, he saves his life at one point in the movie, and, like, even Olga asks him, it's like, what are you gonna do? Like, even if you kill everyone, are you gonna kill the boy? And he's like, probably not. You know, he's like, I'd rather take him with us.
Like, speaking to that, was the big dude, when, like, going back a bit where he saved the kid's life, was that big
was
dude?
Was that Hafthor Bjornsson?
I was going to say an MMA fighter, but sure. I don't know.
Oh. No, it was Hafthor Julius Bjornsson, who's, he's a strongman competitor.
Oh, okay.
And he is... he plays the Mountain from season 3 onward of Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. So like he's in Game of Thrones for like 3 minutes at a time. Got it.
Yeah, he's the Mountain for most of the show, but he's not in the first 2 seasons.
No, I saw the Mountain in the second season, and I was like, who the fuck is this weird tree-looking dude?
Oh yeah, it's weird. Like, okay, they keep changing the actor. They kept changing the actor who played him, and then settled on Bjornsson after a while.
We're like, we're filming in Iceland anyway. Just ship him out.
Bjornsson, let's see. Have you ever seen those, like, Heavy Bubbles commercials?
No.
Oh, it's like a... I don't know if it's a real product or not, but, like, it's like a, like, sparkling water that comes in, like, 10-pound bottles.
Why would you want 10-pound bottles of fucking sparkling water?
I don't know. Like, that's why I said I don't know if they're real or not, or if it's just a joke. But the ads themselves are pretty funny because he's got a very just sort of, like, dry sense of humor.
Oh, okay.
Where he's like, I am Hafthor Bjornsson, like, strongest man, world's strongest man, and this is my product, Heavy Bubbles. It comes in 3 sizes. 5 kilos, 10 kilos, 20 kilos.
Oh my god.
He's like, you can buy them at your supermarket. And then there's like some guy who's like can't carry the bottle and his groceries at the same time. And he's like, what if I have other products? And he's just like, do not buy other products. Although Bjornsson had some feud with Eddie Hall, who's another, world's strongest man competitor.
Oh no.
And they had like a surprisingly competent freak show boxing match to settle their beef. And it's weird because like he's like 6'9" and a bajillion pounds, and Eddie Hall is like 6'3", so there's a huge height disparity between the two. And they weirdly fought like appropriate fights for their stature.
What do you mean appropriate fights? Like they actually had a pretty good fight, even though there was a huge, though someone clearly had the higher ground.
Like they're both strong men with giant muscles that prevent them from punching correctly,
right?
And have never boxed before. But like Bjornsson, as the taller guy, was like, keeping his distance, trying to jab and throw like long 1-2s and stuff, straight punches to keep Hall off of him. And then Hall spent the whole time trying to slip the jab, get inside, and like come up with, I guess he was a southpaw, so the right hook. And it's like, how are they doing this? These guys have never boxed in their life. Their arms are too big for them to punch, but they're actually having a competent boxing match right now.
Resident players in fisticuffs.
Yeah.
They do it for a hobby, just like on the off season.
But yeah, I mean, this movie, the Northman did have a fair amount of cameos. I mean, Bjork obviously was the big one.
Which I didn't know who Bjork was until like a couple minutes ago when I was looking back and I saw, oh, she's the girl with the weird things, because I thought she might have been like the Valkyrie with the braces, which I know they're not braces, but I'll address that in a second. Yeah, I didn't know who Bjork played until I was looking at the photos.
Yeah, I mean, so Bjork, Ralph Ineson has a little cameo.
Yeah, that was fun. That's the witch.
Yeah, Hafthor Bjornsson, who, again, is most famous for playing the Mountain. He's the big dumb guy in the weird, cricket game they play.
Mm-hmm. Which I liked that scene. Like, personally, we talk about like creating the reality of the world, and it's like, we don't need to have a sporting event in this epic. And it's like, oh no, it's fun because it shows like, yeah, he is actually like, our main character is actually like,
we don't need to have a name of Knatlaker in this movie. But we'll have it anyway. Who else? Kate Dickie is in like the background of a scene. She just yells at someone from like off screen. And Ian White, who is mainly like a special effects kind of actor, is the Draugr.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Like he's the engineer in
nice.
Prometheus and a bunch of other like creatures.
Okay.
Like he plays the Predator in a bunch of Predator movies.
Okay.
So yeah, he's like he does all that sort of stuff. He plays various. He also plays the Mountain in an earlier season.
I'm
of
guessing
Game of
season
Thrones.
2. He was the tree guy.
Yeah,
he's the guy that looked like a tree in season 2.
Yeah, he plays the Mountain and various other like giant monstrous characters in Game of Thrones. So yeah, he was also Peter Mayhew's stunt double in various Star Wars things where
I'm
Peter
guessing the
Mayhew
newer
was too
ones.
sick to walk.
Yeah, he couldn't
R.I.P.
stand up. Yeah,
I mean, being tall and like 70 years old is a nasty combo.
Yeah, it's pretty tough. I also wanted to just like quickly, because like, I mean, we didn't really go into we kind of touched on the cast. I had no idea who the main bad guy was. I had never seen
he's
this
just
guy before.
He's known within the Nordic countries, but outside of that,
Okay.
in America, like he's a non-entity because he was in He was in The Square, which was like a big European movie a few years ago.
Okay. I was gonna say he's in that Netflix show Dracula, but I thought he was fine. I thought he was absolutely fine. It was fun seeing Anya Taylor-Joy. It's weird. Like ever since the Queen's Gambit, like people are like, oh yeah, Anya Taylor-Joy. She's like actually a pretty good actress, even though it's like she was also in The New Mutants and Glass and
Yeah.
and
Well, I mean, we all know her from The
Split.
Witch.
Right, which
Fantastic in.
I was gonna say she was appropriate to fine in. She did a great job.
Oh, I
But-
thought she did a great job in The Witch. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I think her eyes were closer together back then.
Well, that's because I think she was a little bit like, she had a little bit more of the baby fat or the teenage fat.
That's true.
Because now she's like, I look at her now and you look at her back then and you're like, my God, what did you just like have all of the fat sucked out of you? She's like so thin and like, yeah, it makes her eyes look even more like Uma Thurman's. I don't know. But like ever since Queen's Gambit, where she like had to hold that whole show down, people are like, oh, if she's in the movie, like we really need to pay attention to it, because she was also really good in Emma, and like she's good. But yeah, it's just like, it's fun seeing her in there. I was surprised. I forgot that Nicole Kidman was in this, so I saw it at AMC, and AMC always has that beginning section.
Oh yeah,
with
the Nicole Kidman intro.
Yeah, and we always just want AMC to kill that Nicole Kidman intro. And then she appeared in the movie and I was like, this is too much. I can't go to AMC, watch her as the lead and then see her in a movie. This is just too weird. But of course, it's Nicole Kidman and she's good. I thought she would start like starring in smaller independent things that like interested her, but then I saw the price tag of this movie and I was like, oh, I bet a good like 25 million went to her.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of actors who took less than what they could get, and a lot of the budget went to shipping them all to God knows where and building huts out of grass.
Yeah, North Ireland. But even then, like, yeah, I guess so. Because they did have a couple of huge, incredible set pieces. Like the beginning was like an amazing set piece, and they had
And the
to
volcano at the end is entirely green screen.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because that was the only. So I had this weird reaction to that ending fight scene where, like, for some reason the whole time I was wondering if they were both fighting naked on the volcano. But I couldn't like stop thinking about that, because I was like, oh, that's a nice touch. And then one of the people I saw it with was like, yeah, okay, so they stripped down because they're on top of a volcano because it's so hot. How are their feet surviving? Like, wouldn't their feet just like start burning? And
No, they're
immediately
fighting with their cocks out because it's cool, Matt.
sword fight indeed. Only comes out during the moon.
I mean, it's weird because it's like, it's an appendage that you have limited control over, that is hanging loosely away from your body. Seems like a huge hazard in a sword fight.
I had read that what's his name, Alexander Skarsgard, was wearing like a thong on there, like a bloody thong from getting his back freaking stabbed to death by the kid.
Oh, I know.
So
They both were wearing, cod
Well,
pieces to cover it up.
Yeah, and then they just digitally, because like I feel like even if they were like being savage, like, yeah, it is more savage to fight someone in the nude. It's very Beowulf. No Amleth Beowulf. But like that scene, I was so focused on that. I was like, is this like Eastern Promises? That I couldn't focus on the actual fight scene until it was over, and then I was like, oh, I guess that happened. But was the fight scene pretty fast?
It was pretty short, and it was also pretty straightforward. Like, it wasn't a spectacular fight scene in terms of the actual fighting, more like as a set piece. I think what crossed me as weird was like, everything looked very VFX driven. Like, you could tell the environment they were in, had a fair bit of CGI to bring it to life, and the lighting looked a little off, I think, because of that.
Okay.
It just had that uncanny feeling again, which kind of pulled me out of the movie a little bit.
Yeah.
And it also made me think of Mandy, because they have a chainsaw fight at the end of Mandy that is in a similarly bleak hellscape. And, I mean, obviously it's not a volcano in Mandy, but the hellscape of that movie was done more practically. Mm-hmm. So it just looks way better. And I'm like, man, this is better than Mandy.
It's weird because, like,
although, like, when his arms get cut and they're like falling off and it looks kind of fake but also kind of amazing, I like that.
In this,
yeah.
When did that happen?
Man, you really weren't paying attention.
I know. You
were just staring at their dicks the whole time.
I really I was fascinated. I was like, are these actors actually naked, like slapping swords and swords against each other? And like, I was just like, all right, because I wanted to add Alexander Skarsgård's dick to my list of, like, I've seen his penis. Like, I don't know. I was just so disengaged. Like, the other thing I was constantly thinking about was, like, because I think they shot part of it on an iceberg, and I couldn't remember if they'd shot it on an iceberg or on a volcano. And I was like, they couldn't have shot it on a volcano because the noxious fumes would have caused them to pass out and or die.
Yeah, you can't film on a volcano, man, unless you're Werner Herzog.
I mean,
that man can do anything.
Yeah, that fucking guy. Yes,
for the naturalism of this scene, we are going to the top of this volcano.
Do you really want me to go barefoot?
Only if you must. I have sandals for you that we can edit in post. But otherwise, yes, you must be nude.
But what if some of the magma flies up and no, it is for the realism. I can't do a Werner Herzog. I haven't watched.
These are the risks we take. I will direct nude if it makes you feel more comfortable. No,
Paul
Werner,
Schrader.
Please don't. I don't need to see that.
Paul Schrader just shows up naked. He's like, I thought we were just going to be a new director. You heard about that, right? With the canyon, like Lindsay Lohan.
No, what?
Oh, okay. So, like, Lindsay Lohan had to do a bunch of nude scenes in, I think it was like the canyon. I don't know. It was like starring Lindsay Lohan. It was supposed to be her movie, like, getting back on track.
Yeah.
And they hired,
it was written by Bret Easton Ellis, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Weird, because he's written some good things.
Has he?
He's capable of writing good things. I'll say that. He generally doesn't, but he's capable.
Well, like
of
the only movie that I know of that is based off of something that everyone kind of uniformly likes is American Psycho, and the only reason people like that is because it's kind of like an insult of the novel, not really an adaptation of it.
Well, no, Bret Easton Ellis said he really likes the movie, and he said it does because he said the movie. He said he was really disappointed with the reception the book got because people took it too seriously.
Oh,
and he said he really liked the movie because it was comedic. And he's like, the book was supposed to be funny, and this movie's hilarious. So I'm glad that came through. He's actually a huge fan of the movie. He liked it a lot.
I was gonna say, like, he seems like the kind of guy who would just like take it super seriously. But yeah, so Lindsay Lohan had to do like these nude scenes, but she wasn't comfortable. And I guess her co-star was a porn actor, so he was obviously like pretty used to it.
Yeah,
so
like, all right, let me just take my Viagra. It's like, no, not here.
He just shows up naked to every set. It's like, no, you can be in clothes. Like, nope, I'm good. Let's shoot. But Paul Schrader was like, if it makes you feel better, like the whole crew will get naked to shoot these scenes. And the whole crew got naked to shoot those scenes.
Wow. I mean, that's kind of weird, but cool. Like that, because that's one of those things that could go one of two very different ways, you know? Like, you either make it like way better and it's like a show of solidarity, like, hey, look, you don't have to feel embarrassed, we'll all be embarrassed together, or it could go horribly wrong and just like throw everything off.
What did you say, casting couch?
I know. Like imagine you're Lindsay Lohan and like the entire male crew is just rock hard the whole time. You're like, oh no. Or they're not hard and you're like, oh no, am I ugly?
Well, I mean, it was Lindsay Lohan in like 2013. I don't know if you remember that, but like her whole face looked like it was stung by 1,000 bees.
I don't remember a lot of things, man, and that's intentional.
It's probably for the best. Let's be honest. Yeah, but she's looking better now. Anyway, yeah. So I don't know. The last fight scene I felt was a little bit like anticlimactic. But I thought they stuck the landing on the ending.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad he just goes to Valhalla at the end. I'm like, yeah, it's exactly what this movie needs to end on.
Yeah, I mean and it's like a nice little like contained movie, and like so yeah, he has that scene where like, okay, so here's why I like the romance, because in revenge movies you always have to have some sort of plot contrivance for the hero to actually get his revenge.
Or get the revenge.
Right. So in this case, it's like I know it's corny, but it also probably falls into sort of like the traditional narrative conventions of like, you know, there's something that is more important to him than getting his you know, childish revenge on this guy who's because like by the time he gets to the uncle to fight him, the uncle is so defeated.
Yeah.
As far as like a king would be concerned, I think he's happy with his life more than he would have been otherwise, which actually I never thought about, because like he's got his children around him. He's got his slaves to tend his land. He has the woman that he loves. Maybe he never really wanted to be the king, and was okay giving up Norway. But like, he's pretty far down the sort of like the success ladder that he was when Amleth left. And you know, there's so many reasons why Amleth should not continue his revenge fantasy, but they have to find some way to pull him back in to ultimately fight the final boss and win the game.
Yeah.
And it's almost always super contrived, and I'm okay with that, because all plot, like as one person said, all plots are contrived. But I appreciate it when they put in an effort or give a character-based reason. In his case, it's like, he will never stop chasing us because he is a vindictive man, because he's of the North, and we Northerners are all vindictive men. So he will chase me until I'm dead, so I must go after him so he does not kill my line. Yeah, so I appreciate giving that story reason and then I don't know.
That's I'm still like not huge on the love story.
I wonder what needed to happen, because like when it comes to writing things like that, it's always about like a lack of execution or a failure to execute than that the idea actually wasn't valid. And I wonder what needed to happen earlier on to make it feel like it's stuck. Because for me, just having them look at each other kind of like with like longing looks was enough for me. I mean, maybe
I was going to say, I think if they made it less overt, it might have worked better. That's just a guess. I'm not totally sure.
Yeah. One other thing, like one of the problems he ran into was he wanted to make a slow-paced movie, and the studio demanded
it's not
a more
slow-paced.
It's like the only way he could get slow-paced was with his violent scenes, which like all build into some sort of a ruthless climax. But I guess he wanted a more like artsy, slow-paced movie. The studio wanted a more accessible story, which is where your thoughts of like, oh, the romance come in. They hit a happy balance, but it does sound like maybe that happy balance was like a compromised balance for you. I thought it worked. I thought the tone of it and the pace of it, except for maybe the beginning, worked really well.
I mean, I did think the pacing was a little fast.
Yeah.
Like, it seemed like the movie wanted to be slower than it was.
Yeah. I can see it. I can see an alternate cut of this movie being like 3 hours long and just as effective. But allowing
Maybe
everything
2.5.
to... Okay, yeah, 2.5.
It's like it's right on 2 hours.
It's just a hair over. It's actually 2:20.
Wait, really?
Well, okay, it's 2:17 with credits probably. So there's room that they could have expanded it, and if they expanded it, adds to sort of like the epic feel. But I don't know. It's crazy. Just like they shot for 87 days, and for it to come out as as like with Eggers' voice still really strongly intact as much as it is like super amazing.
Impressive.
To me. I'm sure a lot of it had to do with like Alexander Skarsgård was very involved in the process. And so he probably was able to say, studio, we don't want that interference here. We want to make the movie that we want to make. Like, this is the movie we pitched. I'm all in. And if you can get the actors all in, it's going to be better. And like, he already knew Willem Dafoe. Nicole Kidman is surprising. I hear she's like, especially if she's a producer, she's surprisingly effective in helping you as the director bring your vision to life. So I'm hoping that Alexander Skarsgård was similar. And obviously, like I said, Anya Taylor-Joy had a lot of goodwill coming in. So she her being attached probably helped the studio feel a bit safer, and also helped Eggers because he's like, okay, I've worked with you before, so I'm a bit more comfortable. I feel like the behind the scenes of this movie are like really interesting, and I would love to
whenever this comes out on Blu-ray, you got to get like the one with all the bonus features.
It just skips a regular release and goes straight to like Criterion.
I mean, some movies sometimes do that.
I don't have too much more to say about The Northman. I really liked it a lot. I think, actually, I do have a question, but if you have anything else on The Northman that you want to add.
No, I mean, I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah. So I had two questions. One, where does this fall as far as like, if you had to rank all of Robert Eggers' films, where would you put this? Third? One is The Witch, or one is Lighthouse?
Lighthouse is 1, 2 is The Witch, this is 3.
I think they talk about the studio wanting it to be accessible for the audience. This just hits on so many levels. So this is probably the one I would watch the most. And then probably The Lighthouse and then The Witch. I feel bad because I really enjoy his movies in theaters. And I think if I saw The Witch in theaters, I would have liked it a lot more.
I could see that.
The other question because I feel like if I watch this movie on a TV screen, I'm just going to be kind of like depressed. So do you think this or Everything Everywhere was better right now?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I think I might be leaning towards Everything Everywhere All the Time.
Okay. All the time. Everything Everywhere All the Time. I'm kind of inclined to go with you because like I really, really like The Northman, and I thought about it a lot, but so far Everything Everywhere has stuck with me a lot. And also like there were moments when I was watching The Northman that I was like, dang, I kind of wish Ridley Scott directed this action scene because this would have been like even more brutal. Didn't happen very often, but there were a couple of times I was like, oh, I remember Ridley Scott doing something like this. Just because like Ridley Scott has got like the most brutal. I still think Ridley Scott probably has the most brutal action scenes I've seen in a movie. That kind of make you go, ooh.
Well, he does I think Ridley Scott does a better job on the action part of the action scenes. Like he sells action, I think, a lot better than most
directors
people on Earth.
Yeah. In his own unique Ridley Scott way.
Yep.
So if they want to do more investigating into our interests, I don't know, that was weird. Where would they go?
Underthewheels.com, our Under the Wheels YouTube channel. We're on Stitcher and Apple Podcasts, and then video at underthewheels.com is a great way to get in touch with us, or just follow us on Facebook.
Yeah, and music is by Mike. I wanted to point out that it's going to be so weird when like this is finally out of theaters and they're like, oh, we're going to stream it, and you have to get Peacock to watch The Northman. It's just like a weird.
What?
Well, because it's released by Universal, so you can watch it on Peacock. Watch with ads. Watch an advertisement for Sunday Night Football, and then watch Alexander Skarsgård kill a bunch of people. Nothing says family fun. The other thing is the cinematographer for this movie. It looks like the next movie he's working on is an M. Night Shyamalan movie. So
Oh,
There.
M. Night.
M. Night. Oh man, he just won't go. He it's just like the episode The Long Night. It just won't go away. What do you mean they resolved the whole issue of The Long Night in one night? What the fuck?
Well, I go out, see Everything Everywhere All at Once and The Northman in a double feature. We have a lot more good movies hopefully coming out this year, and it's hopefully like all of the sadness and depression of 2020 in movies and 2021 in movies is like, it's like 2022 comes every now and then. They have a year where it's just like every single movie that comes out is like a defining movie year, and I wonder if this is going to be that for the 2020s.
Hey, that would be cool.
Yeah, it'd be a great time to be alive, I'll tell you that. Well, until we do our inevitable Coda episode, I am Matt.
And I'm Gabe.
And you've just been Under the Wheels.
I watched Wings of Desire, and
Yeah, Academy
that
Award
movie
winner.
could not be made like in the last 20 years.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good.
Interesting. Oh wait, no, you're talking about the Wim Wenders movie, right? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm thinking of Wings of Desire, the old 1930 or 1927
Wings?
movie. Oh yeah, I guess it is called Wings. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I ain't watching movies. I'm not watching any silent movies, man.
But dude, we just watched The Northman.
That movie is more screaming than anything.
Can you imagine the silent film version of it? It's just Alexander Skarsgard just like shaking back and forth as he's yelling, and then
like
it cuts to a
convulsing
title
and
card.
frothing at the mouth, and then there's a title card that just says angry yelling,
Or just like roar.
or just ah.
I mean, like you took the silent film class, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so like the reality of it is like if they just showed him yelling, they wouldn't actually put a title card. But that's what everyone
it's only
thinks.
when there's actual speaking, and it's not obvious what's being said, they would do a title card.
Yeah, it's like if this is plot significant, okay, let's put it on screen. If not, it's just two people who are just saying like nothing. It's a play. It's two people saying nothing for that one important something.
You are not the first to pass this way. Nor shall you be the last. Those who seek the spirit of Norway face peril and adventure, but more often find beauty and charm. We have always lived in the sea, so look first to the spirit of the seafarer.
Finished.